The ruins were quiet. Only the sound of the wind moving through broken walls and shattered roofs filled the air. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of the alien village, and the ground was scattered with burned wood, broken stone, and the faint smell of ash among the ruins. A small alien girl hid behind what used to be her home. Her body trembled, her eyes wide with fear. She had not eaten for days. Her stomach was empty and her lips were dry. Every shadow made her jump. Every sound made her heart race. Her people had always told her stories of humans, and every story ended with blood. They said humans devoured the weak, that they were predators who came from faraway worlds to destroy. She believed those stories, and now, with her family gone, she thought her time had come. In the distance, she saw movement. A tall figure stepped over a collapsed wall. A human soldier. His boots crunched over the debris, his uniform covered with dust. His face was tired but calm. The girl's heart almost stopped. She pressed herself against the stone, hoping he would not notice her, but he did. His eyes caught hers, and in that instant, she froze like prey caught by a hunter. The human stopped. He did not rush forward, he only looked at her. His hands were not raised in anger. His weapon rested on his back. He slowly crouched down, reaching into a pouch at his side. The alien girl thought this was it, that he would pull out a blade and finish her. Her hands shook and she picked up a small piece of wood, trying to make it look like a weapon. But the human did not pull out a weapon. Instead, he placed something on the ground, a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. Her stomach twisted painfully at the sight. She had not eaten for so long, but her fear was stronger than her hunger. She pressed back harder against the stone. Her breathing grew fast. She whispered to herself the words her people used. Humans are monsters. They will eat you. Run. Hide. But she could not run. Her legs were too weak. Her body was too tired. All she could do was stare. The soldier did not move closer. He pushed the food forward and then stepped back. His voice broke the silence. The words were strange, rough in her ears, but his tone was calm, gentle. He was not threatening. He was speaking as if he wanted to comfort her. She did not understand his language, but she understood the way his voice lowered, soft like the way her mother used to speak before bedtime. The girl's eyes moved from his face to the bread. Her throat ached, her stomach growled. She thought maybe it was a trick, that if she reached out, he would grab her and devour her. That was what she had always been told. But he stayed still, watching her carefully. His hands empty, his eyes patient. Minutes passed like hours. The fire inside her stomach finally broke her fear. Slowly, she stretched out her thin arm, her claws shaking as she reached for the food. Her eyes never left him, ready to pull back at the first sign of danger. But he did not move. She snatched the bread and pulled it to her chest, holding it tight like it was treasure. She sniffed it, then bit into it. The taste made her eyes water. Warmth spread through her body as she chewed. Her jaw hurt from how fast she ate. But she did not stop. The soldier only watched. His face did not twist into anger or greed. He did not try to take the food back. He simply let her eat. And when she finished, he placed a small bottle of water on the ground and stepped back again. She hesitated, then took it. The cool liquid slid down her throat, refreshing and strange. It felt unreal. When she was done, she waited, expecting him to act, expecting him to attack now that her guard was down. Her people had told her that humans struck when trust was given. She clutched the stick tightly, watching his every move. But he only leaned back against the stone, resting, his weapon still, untouched. His eyes closed for a moment as if he was simply tired. The alien girl could not understand. Why was he not hurting her? Why was he giving her food? Nothing made sense. Her fear was still there, but inside her chest, another feeling started to grow. It was small, but it was there. A question. What if the stories about humans were wrong? What if not all of them were monsters? Night began to fall and the air grew colder. She wrapped her arms around herself and shivered. The soldier opened his pack again. He took out a small device and pressed it. A soft fire sparked to life, warming the air. He moved it closer to her. Not too close, but enough for her to feel the heat. She wanted to crawl nearer, but her fear still chained her in place. Still she watched him carefully. Her heart raced every time he moved. She could not sleep, not while he was near, but she could not run either. She stayed in the ruins, her eyes wide, her body shaking, caught between fear and hunger, safety and danger. In her mind, he was still a predator, a creature who could devour her at any moment. Yet with each passing second, her certainty weakened, for the first time in her life. She began to doubt what she had been told. And though she was still terrified, a strange thought whispered in the back of her mind. Maybe this human was not here to devour her body, but to do something else she could not yet understand. The night was long, and the ruins were colder than she had ever felt. The little alien girl pulled her thin arms tighter around herself, her body shivering. Her eyes never left the human. He sat a short distance away, close enough to see her but not close enough to touch. His face was calm, his eyes half closed as if he wanted to rest, but she knew he was not asleep. Humans, she thought, never slept. They were predators. They waited in silence until the prey lowered its guard. She could not forget the stories her people told. Humans eat the weak, they hunt at night. Once you trust them, it is too late. Her claws dug into the broken stick she held like a weapon. It was nothing compared to his rifle, nothing compared to his strength, but it gave her courage. If he moved, if he tried to come near, she told herself she would fight. Even if it meant her end, at least she would not be taken easily. The human shifted slightly, moving closer to the fire he had built. The orange glow lit his face, casting long shadows on the ruined walls. The girl's breath caught in her throat. She thought this was it. He was coming for her. Her heart pounded, but he only stretched his arms, rubbing his shoulder as if it hurt. Then he sat back again, ignoring her completely. She blinked, confused. That was not what a monster would do. Monsters attacked without hesitation. They did not give food and then sit in silence. Still, her fear did not fade. She chewed on her lip, watching him with wide eyes. The bread he had given her sat warm in her stomach, and the water had cleared her dry throat. But now another hunger had grown inside her, not for food, but for answers. Why had he fed her? Why had he not hurt her? What did he really want? The fire cracked softly, sparks flying into the night. The human took out a piece of cloth and tied it around his arm. She noticed a dark patch spreading under his sleeve. It was blood. She realized he was hurt. Her ears twitched at the thought. A wounded predator was still dangerous, but weaker. Was that why he had not attacked? Was he too injured to fight her? The thought gave her courage. She gripped the stick tighter, telling herself that if he tried to move closer, she could strike first. But even as she told herself this, her eyes studied him. His movements were slow, not like a predator hiding its strength. He winced slightly when he tightened the cloth. His head tilted back against the wall, his breathing steady but tired. The girl frowned. Her people had said humans were merciless, but the one before her looked exhausted, maybe even vulnerable. She shook her head quickly. No, it was a trick. She could not forget the warnings. Trusting a human meant death. She hugged her knees, her stomach twisting again. The warmth of the fire touched her skin, and part of her wanted to move closer, but her fear was stronger. She stayed where she was, trapped between hunger for safety and terror of betrayal. Hours passed. The human stayed awake, shifting every so often to feed the fire or glance at the shadows. He did not look at her much, as if he wanted her to believe she was safe. That made her more nervous. Why was he pretending? Why was he letting her sit there instead of taking what he wanted? The silence between them grew heavy, filled only by the crackle of fire and the distant howl of night creatures. At one point, the human reached into his pack again. The girl tensed, raising her stick, but he only pulled out a small blanket. He shook it out, then placed it on the ground near the fire. He looked at her once, then tapped the blanket lightly before leaning back again. Her eyes widened. Was he offering it to her? The thought made no sense. Why would he give her something warm unless he was luring her closer? Her body trembled. She wanted the blanket. The cold was cutting into her bones. But she stayed still. Her mind screamed not to trust him. She whispered, again what her mother had once said, "Humans eat the weak. Do not trust them. He will take you if you step closer." Yet the fire's glow pulled at her, and the blanket sat there like a trap she both feared and longed for. She did not move that night. She stayed awake, staring at him until her eyes ached. Her small body swayed with exhaustion, but she forced herself to remain alert. He did not attack. He did not move toward her. He only sat near the fire, sometimes humming softly, his voice low, strange, and deep. The sound sent shivers through her, but not all from fear. It reminded her of lullabies her people used to sing. The mistrust in her heart was still strong, stronger than anything else. She wanted to believe he was different, but the fear would not let go. Every glance at his weapon reminded her of her weakness. Every smile he gave, small and quiet, felt like a hidden threat. He was waiting, she thought, waiting for the moment she closed her eyes. That was when he would devour her. Not with kindness, but with cruelty. And yet, when the morning light began to creep over the ruins, she realized something that made her chest tighten. He had not moved closer the entire night. He had not touched the blanket he left for her. It was still there, waiting, untouched, and he had not once reached for her. Instead, he looked even more tired than before, as if he had stayed awake to guard not only himself, but her too. The girl did not understand, and that was what frightened her the most. He was not acting like the monster she had been warned about, but that only made him more dangerous in her eyes, because if he was not here to devour her body, then what did he want from her heart? The sun rose slowly over the ruins, its pale light spreading across the broken stones and charred wood. The alien girl sat curled up in the corner where she had stayed all night. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she had forced herself to remain awake. She kept expecting the human to attack when her guard was down, yet he never moved toward her. Even now, in the morning light, he sat quietly near the fire, rubbing his arm where blood had stained the cloth he used to wrap his wound. The girl's stomach growled again. She pressed her hands against it, embarrassed by the sound. Her people had said hunger was weakness, and weakness made you easy prey. She looked at the human, expecting him to laugh, to mock her, but he did not. Instead, he reached into his pack once more. Her body stiffened, her claws digging into the broken stick she still held. She thought he would finally reveal his trap, but instead, he pulled out another piece of food. It was dried meat wrapped in cloth. The smell of it drifted toward her, rich and tempting. Her throat tightened with longing, but her fear held her back. The human tore a piece for himself and ate it slowly, then placed another piece on the ground between them. He pushed it forward, with the tip of his boot, then leaned back again. His hands were empty, his eyes calm. He waited. The girl did not move. Her heart pounded as she stared at the food. It had to be a trick, she told herself that. But her body betrayed her. Her claws tapped against the stone as her hunger grew stronger. She looked at him, then back at the food. The human noticed her hesitation. His face softened, and he spoke. Again, his words were strange to her, but his tone was warm, patient. He was not commanding her, he was offering. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. But the more she looked at him, the less he seemed like a predator. He did not bare his teeth or raise his voice. He did not lunge forward. Instead, he leaned back against the wall, resting, giving her space. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly. She could not understand him, and yet for the first time she did not feel like prey in his presence. Slowly, carefully, she stretched her arm out. Her claws hovered above the food, ready to pull back if he moved, but he did not. He only watched with steady eyes. She grabbed the piece and pulled it close. Sniffing it, her stomach growled again, and she bit into it. The taste was strange, salty and chewy, but it filled her mouth with warmth. She ate quickly, almost desperately, finishing the piece before her fear could return. When she was done, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and stared at him. He had not moved. He had not taken advantage of her distraction. That confused her more than anything. If he was not going to hurt her, then why was he helping her? What did he Want in return, the human's gaze met hers for a moment. She thought she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in another creature. Not hunger, not cruelty, but something softer, gentler. She looked away quickly, her cheeks heating with shame. She did not want him to see her confusion. The human shifted slightly and pulled out a small canteen of water. He drank from it, then held it out toward her. Her ears twitched. She licked her lips, her throat dry again. But she hesitated. She remembered what her people had said. Do not drink from the hand of a predator, for once you do, you are his. Still, her thirst was painful. She stared at the canteen, torn between fear and need. The human seemed to understand her struggle. Instead of holding it out any longer, he placed the canteen on the ground and pushed it toward her, then leaned back once more. He did not pressure her, he did not rush her, he gave her time. She waited, watching him closely, and when she saw he would not move, she crawled forward, her body trembling. Her claws closed around the canteen, and she lifted it to her lips. The water was cool, smooth, and it washed away the dryness in her throat. She drank deeply, almost too much. Before stopping herself, she placed the canteen back where he had left it, as if afraid of keeping it too long. The human nodded once, slow and calm. He said something again, the words low and steady. She could not understand, but the sound made her ears lower slightly. It did not feel like a threat. It felt like gratitude, or maybe reassurance. For the first time, she wondered if his voice was not a weapon, but a gift. The girl hugged her knees to her chest, her eyes never leaving him. Her fear was still there, but it was changing. It was no longer the sharp fear of being eaten. It was something else, something that made her chest feel heavy. She thought maybe he wanted her trust, not her flesh. That thought frightened her in a different way. Trust was dangerous, trust could kill you. And yet the kindness he showed her was real. She could not deny it, not anymore. The day passed slowly. The human rested, sometimes humming softly, sometimes closing his eyes. She stayed alert, but her body began to relax just a little. The tension in her claws eased, her shoulders lowered. She even shifted slightly closer to the fire when the air grew colder. He noticed, but he did not speak. He only added more wood to the flames. In her heart, confusion grew. She had thought he would devour her. She had thought she would end as prey. But now, she was beginning to see that maybe she was wrong. Maybe humans were not monsters, or at least not all of them. As the sun sank low again, painting the ruins with red light, the alien girl realized something that made her shiver. It was not the thought of him hurting her that scared her now, but the thought of what would happen if he left her alone. The night was quiet at first. The fire burned low, crackling softly in the ruins. The alien girl sat close to the wall, her eyes fixed on the human. He was resting again, his head tilted back, his weapon beside him. His breathing was steady, but she knew he was awake. He had stayed awake the night before, watching the shadows guarding the fire. She wondered if he would do the same again. Her eyelids grew heavy. She had not slept in many nights, but she was afraid to close her eyes. If she slept, the human might strike. If she slept, the monsters of the night might come. Her claws clutched the stick in her hand, but her grip was weak, her body was too tired. Then the sound came, a faint growl in the distance, low and deep. Her ears twitched, and her heart jumped. The human's head turned. His hand slowly reached for his weapon. His body tensed. The girl froze. Her people had spoken of scavenger beasts that roamed the ruins after dark, hungry for flesh. She had never seen one, but she had heard their cries in the night. The growl grew louder, followed by another, and another. Shadows moved at the edge of the firelight. The girl gasped, pulling her knees to her chest. Her eyes darted to the human. He was on his feet now, standing firm, his weapon raised, his jaw tight. He looked like the predator she had always feared, but he was not aiming at her. His eyes were on the darkness beyond. The first beast appeared, its body low to the ground, its eyes glowing in the firelight, its fangs bared as it crept closer. Behind it, more shapes moved, 5, maybe 6, circling them. The girl whimpered, pressing back against the wall. She thought the human would abandon her. She thought he would save himself and leave her to the beasts. After all, why would a human risk his life for her? But he did not move away. Instead, he stepped in front of her, blocking her with his body, his stance firm, his weapon steady. She could hardly believe it. He was shielding her. His voice rang out sharp and loud. He shouted something she could not understand, but the tone was fierce. It was the sound of a warrior. The first beast lunged. The human fired. The blast echoed through the ruins. The beast fell, snarling. The others howled and charged. The girl screamed and covered her ears. The human fought, firing again and again. His weapon flashing in the night, but the beasts were fast, too many. One leapt at him, knocking him back. He drew his blade and struck hard. Blood splattered across the stones. The girl shook, unable to move. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. Her eyes widened as another beast charged, its jaws open, ready to tear. But the human swung his blade, pushing it back. His arm bled where claws had torn into him, yet he did not fall. He fought with everything he had, protecting her without hesitation. The battle felt endless. The fire roared higher as the beasts circled again. The human's breath grew heavy, his movements slower. The girl's heart pounded. If he fell, she would die. She clutched her stick tighter. But what could she do against such monsters? Tears filled her eyes. She hated herself for being so weak. Then one of the beasts broke past him. Its body low, its teeth flashing, it rushed straight toward her. She cried out, raising her stick. But before it could strike, the human was there. He slammed into the beast, dragging it away from her. His blade sank deep, but the creature's claws raked across his side. He grunted in pain, blood spilling. The girl's breath caught. He was hurt badly. She stared at him, shocked. He had saved her again, even as his own life bled out. She could not understand it. Why would he do this? Why would a human fight so hard to protect her? At last, the final beast fell. The ruins grew silent again. Except for the crackle of fire and the heavy sound of his breathing, he staggered, his hand pressed to his side. Blood dripped between his fingers. The girl crawled forward without thinking, her fear forgotten for a moment. Her claws reached for him. Trembling, she wanted to help, but she did not know how. The human looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. He spoke, his voice low. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. He was telling her it was over, that she was safe. Her chest tightened, a warmth spread through her, stronger than fear. She realized then that he was no monster, no predator waiting to devour her. He was something else, something she had never known before. As he sank down beside the fire, his body weak from blood loss, the girl stayed near him, her small hands shaking as she tried to tear pieces of cloth to press against his wounds. She had no skill, no training, but she wanted to try. For the first time since she had seen him, she did not want to run. She wanted him to live, and in that moment she knew the stories of her people had been wrong. Humans were not only destroyers, not only predators. They could protect, they could give, they could fight for others. He had fought for her, a girl who was nothing to him. He had stood between her and death. Her fear did not vanish completely, but it changed. It was no longer the fear of being devoured. It was the fear of losing him, the fear of being left alone again in the ruins. And that fear was stronger than anything else she had ever known. The fire burned low, casting a weak light across the ruins. The human sat leaning against the broken wall, his face pale from the blood he had lost. His breathing was heavy, slow, but steady. The alien girl sat in front of him, her claws shaking. As she tried to press torn pieces of cloth against his wounds, she had never done this before. She did not know if it would help, but she could not sit and watch him bleed. Her people had told her humans were cruel, that they only took. But this one had fought against the beasts, had thrown himself in front of her to save her life. Even now, injured, his eyes searched the shadows as if he still wanted to protect her. She did not understand it. Her chest ached with confusion. Fear still lived inside her. But it was no longer the same fear. It was not fear of being eaten, it was fear of losing him. He winced when she tied the cloth tighter. She flinched back, thinking he might strike her, but instead he gave her a faint smile. His lips moved, speaking soft words she did not understand. The sound of his voice made her heart race. It was not the voice of a predator. It was gentle, almost thankful. She lowered her eyes quickly, embarrassed. The night passed slowly. She stayed awake, watching him, making sure his wound did not bleed too much. Whenever he shifted or coughed, she jumped, afraid he was slipping away. She hated the feeling of weakness that filled her chest. She had thought she was alone in the ruins, that no one would care if she lived or died. But now she cared if he lived or died. And that thought scared her more than the beasts. By morning, the fire had died. The cold air made her shiver. She looked at the human. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell. He was alive. Relief washed over her. She moved closer, wrapping her thin arms around her knees. Her stomach growled, again, but she ignored it. Hunger no longer scared her as much as the thought of him not waking. After a while, his eyes opened. He looked at her, tired but alert. He tried to sit up, and she quickly reached out, pressing him back gently. He frowned at her touch, surprised, but he did not push her away. Instead, he let her hand rest against his arm for a moment. That small acceptance made her feel strange inside. Her people had always kept their distance, but this human allowed her near. He reached into his pack again, slowly, carefully. He pulled out a piece of dried food and offered it to her. Even in his weak state, he still thought of feeding her. Her throat tightened. She shook her head at first, afraid to take more from him. But he pushed it toward her with a look that told her to eat. She took it finally, nibbling slowly this time. His eyes softened as he watched. The bond between them grew without words. She could not speak his language, and he could not speak hers. But every action said something when he gave her food. It told her he cared if she lived. When she pressed cloth to his wounds, it told him she cared if he survived. Their silence was heavy, but it was not empty. It was filled with feelings neither of them could explain. Later, as the sun rose higher, the human tried to stand. He leaned on the wall, struggling. She jumped to her feet, reaching out to steady him. Her small claws pressed against his arm, guiding him back down. He looked at her, and in that moment, she realized he trusted her too. If he had been the monster her people described, he would never have allowed her to come so close. He would never have let her touch him. Her heart pounded. She looked at him carefully, the way his eyes softened when he met her gaze, the way he did not flinch when she brushed her claw lightly against his hand. He was not devouring her body as she had once feared, but something else was happening, something she did not have words for. It felt dangerous, but it also felt warm. The day was quiet. The ruins around them seemed less frightening now that she was not alone. She stayed near him, sometimes glancing at his wound to make sure it was not worse. Sometimes he caught her staring, and she quickly turned away, but she noticed he smiled faintly when she did. As evening came again, the girl found herself sitting closer to him than before. The fear in her heart had changed. It no longer screamed at her to run, it whispered something different. It told her to stay, to protect him as he had protected her. She wrapped her arms around her knees, leaning slightly toward the fire. Her eyes closed for a moment, and she realized she was not afraid to fall asleep anymore. Not while he was there. When her head tilted and her body gave in to exhaustion, she felt something light touch her shoulders. She opened her eyes halfway and saw the blanket he had placed around her. Her breath caught. He was hurt, weak, and still. He thought of her comfort before his own. She held the blanket tightly, her chest filling with something she had never felt before. Trust in that quiet night without words, a bond grew stronger. It was not spoken, but it was clear. She was no longer just a frightened alien girl, and he was no longer just the human she had feared. They were something else now. Two broken souls clinging to each other in the ruins, and though she could not name the feeling, she knew one thing for certain. If he left her now, she would not survive. Not because of hunger, not because of fear, but because her heart had begun to depend on him. The sky was gray the next morning, heavy clouds rolling across the ruins. The human soldier tried to move, his body still weak from blood loss. He stood slowly, his hand pressed against the wall for balance. The alien girl jumped to her feet, worried he might collapse. She reached out to steady him, and though her claws trembled, he accepted her support. That small act made her chest feel tight. She had never thought she would touch a human and live. They moved slowly through the ruins together. His steps were heavy, hers light but cautious. She stayed close, not just because she feared losing him, but because she wanted to. The fear she once had was still there, but now it mixed with something else, something warmer. She had begun to trust him, and that thought scared her more than the beasts in the night. As they walked, the sound of engines echoed through the broken buildings. The girl's ears twitched, her eyes widened in alarm. She knew that sound. It was the sound of her people's patrol ships. They flew low, searching for survivors. There, voices carried on the wind, sharp and commanding. She froze in place, her heart raced. If they found her with the human, what would they say? The soldier noticed her fear and raised his weapon, ready for danger. But she quickly shook her head, tugging on his arm, trying to make him lower it. She whispered words he could not understand, but her eyes begged him not to fire. They were her people, the ones she had once trusted. But now, she felt a strange dread. If they saw her beside him, they would call her a traitor. Moments later, 3 figures stepped into the ruins. They were armed, their armor gleaming despite the dust. Their eyes locked on her first, and they called her name, relief in their voices. She should have run to them. She should have felt joy at being found. But she could not move. She stood frozen between them and the human, her body torn in two. One of them noticed the soldier behind her. His voice hardened, his weapon raised. He shouted that the human was dangerous, that he was a predator. He told her to step away, to leave the human behind. Her chest clenched. The words of her people came rushing back. Humans eat the weak. Humans cannot be trusted. Humans will devour you. But she remembered the soldier's bloodied hands as he fought for her. She remembered the blanket he had placed over her shoulders. She remembered the way he had shielded her body with his own. The soldier raised his weapon too, his jaw tight. His eyes scanned the new threat. He did not understand the words being shouted, but he understood the tone. He knew they saw him as an enemy. He stepped slightly in front of her, just as he had. When the beast attacked, he was ready to fight again, even though his body was weak. The girl's breath came fast. Her people shouted louder, demanding she come to them. They told her the human would kill her. They promised safety if she left him, but when she looked at the soldier, she saw the truth in his eyes. He was not here to harm her. He had proven that again and again. He did not speak her language, but his actions had spoken louder than words. Her claws tightened around the stick she still carried. She looked at her people, then at him. Her heart pounded as the choice stood before her. If she went to them, she would live, but she would lose him forever. If she stayed with him, she would be called a traitor. She might even die. But she thought of the nights by the fire, of the way he had given her food when he had little left, of the way he had fought with bleeding hands to keep her safe. The choice was clear. Her chest shook as she stepped forward, not toward her people, but toward him. Gasps echoed from the patrol soldiers. They shouted at her, calling her foolish. They said she had been tricked. They warned her that she was already lost, but she did not stop. She moved closer to him, standing at his side. Her small frame pressed against him as if daring them to try and pull her away. The soldier looked down at her, surprise flickering in his tired eyes. He had expected her to run to her people. He had expected her to abandon him. But instead, she had chosen him. His expression softened just for a moment before his eyes hardened again on the threat before them. The patrol leader raised his weapon higher, shouting that the human must die. The girl's voice broke through, louder than it had ever been. She shouted back, her words sharp, declaring that the human was not a monster, that he had saved her life, that he was worth more than all their lies. Her people stared at her in shock. They could not believe what they were hearing. The air grew tense, weapons aimed, hearts racing. The girl's claws clutched at his arm, her eyes burned with fire. She had made her choice. She would stand with him no matter what came. In that moment, the bond between them became unbreakable, stronger than fear, stronger than blood. She thought once that he would devour her, but she now understood. He had devoured something else instead, her fear, her loneliness, her doubt, and in its place, he had given her courage. The ruins fell silent for a moment. The girl's words echoed in the air. Her voice was sharp, louder than she had ever spoken before. The patrol soldiers stared at her in shock. They had expected her to obey, to run to them, to turn her back on the human. But instead, she stood at his side. Her claws gripping his arm, her small frame trembling but firm. The human soldier did not understand her words, but he understood her choice. Her body pressed against his as if shielding him. His tired eyes softened as he looked down at her. He saw courage in her, courage that surprised even him. She was not hiding anymore. She was standing. The patrol leader snarled, his weapon aimed at the human. His voice was filled with anger as he called her a traitor. He said she had been blinded, that the human was tricking her. His men nodded, their weapons raised too. The girl's heart raced. She had never spoken against her people before, but now she shouted again. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. She told them the human had saved her, that he had fought the beasts to protect her, that he had given her food when she was starving. Her people laughed. Bitterly, they said humans were predators, that he only kept her alive for his own use. They warned her that he would devour her heart and soul. Her chest ached at their words, but when she looked at the soldier, she knew they were wrong. He stood tall, wounded and weak, but his eyes were steady. His weapon was raised only to protect, not to strike first. He was ready to die here, and still he did not abandon her. The girl's claws tightened around his sleeve. She turned to face her people, tears burning her eyes. She told them that maybe they were wrong, that maybe not all humans were monsters. Her voice cracked as she said she had seen his kindness, that she had felt his protection, and that no lie could take those memories away. For a moment, the patrol soldiers hesitated. Their eyes flickered with doubt, but their leader shouted again, ordering them to fire. The girl gasped, throwing herself in front of the human, her arms spread wide. Her heart pounded as she screamed at them not to shoot. The soldier behind her tensed, ready to fight, but she held firm. She would not let them harm him. The leader's finger tightened on the trigger, but then something happened. One of the younger soldiers lowered his weapon. His eyes were uncertain as he looked at the girl. He whispered that maybe she was right. Maybe this human was different. Another soldier followed, lowering his weapon too. The leader growled in anger, shouting at them, but the hesitation spread. The human soldier stood silently, watching. He did not understand the words, but he saw the shift. He saw the girl's people lowering their weapons one by one. His own grip loosened slightly, though his eyes stayed sharp. The girl turned back to him, her eyes shining with tears. She whispered something in her own tongue, soft and trembling. He did not know the meaning, but he felt it. He felt the bond in her voice. Finally, the leader spat in anger, lowering his weapon with a curse. He warned the girl that she had chosen a dangerous path, that she would not be welcomed back among them, but she did not flinch. She pressed closer to the human. Her choice was made. Her people left, their voices fading into the distance, their footsteps echoing until the ruins were silent again. The girl's knees gave out and she sank to the ground, shaking. The human crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. His touch was steady, warm. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She looked up at him, and for the first time, since she had met him, she felt no fear in his eyes, only safety. Her voice broke as she whispered to him, not caring that he could not understand. She told him she thought he would devour her when she first saw him. She told him she had believed all the stories, but now she knew the truth. He had devoured something else instead. He had devoured her fear, her loneliness, and the cold walls. Around her heart, the soldier did not know her words, but he understood her tears. He placed the blanket over her shoulders again, then leaned back, letting out a long, tired breath. The bond between them was clear, stronger than any language. stronger than the fear of death. That night, she sat close to him by the fire, closer than she had ever dared before. She leaned against him, her small body trembling. He did not move away. His arm shifted slightly, resting protectively near her. She closed her eyes, for the first time allowing herself to sleep beside him. The ruins were quiet, but inside her heart a storm raged. She had chosen him, against her people, against her fear. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if they would survive another day. But she knew she would not leave him. Not now. Not ever. She thought once that the human would devour her, that her life would end in his shadow. But the truth was different. He had taken something she had never expected. He had claimed her trust, her courage, and perhaps even her heart. And in the silence of the ruins, as the firelight flickered on their faces, the girl understood something she would never forget. The human had not destroyed her. He had saved her, and in saving her, he had changed her forever.